Okay, it's time to talk about something that has really been bugging me lately. Why the flub has AMD not released FSR4 yet for owners of older Radeon GPUs? The lack of updates, the lack of support for these older architectures is baffling to me. Releasing FSR4 for more than just RDNA 4 should be the easiest marketing win of all time, yet AMD aren't taking the win. What is going on here? Is the Radeon division back to their stupid old ways? Let's get into it. As I'm sure many people know, FSR4 upscaling is only officially supported on AMD's latest Radeon RX 9000 series GPUs, which use the RDNA 4 architecture. These GPUs launched nearly a year ago in March 2025, and FSR4 debuted alongside the hardware as a key software addition to the product. Across the testing we've done so far, we've largely been very impressed with FSR4, as it's an enormous step forward in image quality compared to FSR3. When AMD released FSR4, they provided a pretty straightforward explanation as to why the tech was only available on the very latest GPUs. FSR4 was built to use FP8 instructions. RDNA 4 is the only Radeon architecture so far with native FP8 hardware support, so enabling FSR4 on older architectures without FP8 is not possible. Exact same sort of reasoning that NVIDIA has used for DLSS throughout the years. DLSS requires tensor cores, so it doesn't work on older architectures without tensor cores. But before we continue, a word from today's video sponsor.
Today's sponsor spot is brought to you by Thermal Grizzly and their new Duranaut high-performance thermal paste. Duranaut offers extreme long-term stability combined with outstanding thermal conductivity, and this has been achieved through a specially engineered silicon oil combined with aluminium microparticles and zinc oxide nanoparticles of various shapes. Duranaut isn't electrically conductive and won't harden over time. For best performance, you'll want to apply a very thin layer, and to help with this, included is the TG Spatula Pro. The spatula's revised design allows for increased pressure during application, making it easy to spread a thin, even layer of Duranaut. So for more information, please check the link in the video description.
Around the time that gamers started to get their hands on RDNA 4 GPUs, rumors started to emerge that FSR4 might be backported to older architectures. In fact, some of AMD's official communications at launch left the door open to supporting FSR4 or a version of it on previous generation GPUs. But these were just rumors. You never really know what the situation is, and with a legitimate hardware reason for why FSR4 doesn't work on previous gen Radeon cards, we didn't really know whether they could backport FSR4 in a way that was properly functional. Or so we thought, until AMD accidentally published their own source code for a version of FSR4 they were working on that used int8 instructions instead of FP8. This occurred on August 20th, 2025 as part of the FidelityFX SDK 2.0 release, and it was quickly removed by AMD because, well, they weren't planning to release the full open source code for FSR4. But nevertheless, once it became apparent this source code release contained stuff that probably shouldn't have been public, some Radeon owners were quick to download everything before AMD could remove it. It's the internet after all. Once you publish something, it is out there forever. The source code release hinting at an int8 version was a big deal because hardware-accelerated int8 support was first introduced in AMD's RDNA 2 architecture and is also found in RDNA 3 and 4, so theoretically, a version of FSR4 that uses int8 instead of FP8 would be compatible with older Radeon architectures, at least going back to the popular RX 6000 series. Less than a month later, Reddit user AthleteDependent926 compiled an FSR4 int8 DLL file from the source code for people to try themselves. As FSR 3.1 introduced the ability to upgrade FSR using DLL swaps, it became trivial to enable FSR4 on RDNA 3 GPUs via a simple swap to the int8 version in a given FSR 3.1 games directory. With a few additional driver tweaks, it was discovered this DLL also worked with RDNA 2 GPUs, though for whatever reason the latest drivers at the time were incompatible. This is when we decided to test the FSR4 int8 version for ourselves, along with many others. At the start of October 2025, we proved that not only does FSR4 int8 work on RDNA 3 and 2 GPUs, but it works really well. On these older architectures, it provides a significant improvement to visual quality. It looks pretty similar to the full FSR4 FP8 implementation in a lot of scenarios, and while the performance overhead is larger than FSR4 FP8 on RDNA 4, the overall package is a significant improvement. RDNA 2 and 3 owners would absolutely want to use FSR4 over FSR 3.1 if it became available officially. In the conclusion of my FSR4 Int 8 analysis, I said, based on what I've seen today, there is no doubt that AMD should release the Int 8 version of FSR4. The in-development build that I analysed, thanks to AMD's source code Blunder, is a significant upgrade on FSR3 and an improvement upon XeSS that owners of older Radeon cards would often opt to use. For those with RDNA 3 and RDNA 2 GPUs, FSR4 Int 8 would be the go-to choice for upscaling in modern titles. It would extend the life of these products and be a great way to support loyal Radeon buyers. That was 4 months ago. Surely by now, AMD would have released this feature officially, right? It's been proven to exist since August nearly 6 months ago and proven to work well in real-world games for over 4 months. AMD even released a major FSR update in December of 2025 called Redstone, which added features like ML-powered frame generation and ray regeneration. Did AMD release FSR4 Int 8 as part of that major update? No. And today, it's still not available officially. In fact, with Redstone, AMD went out of their way to create updated tables and guides showing which features were compatible with which Radeon architectures. FSR 3.1, now known as the Analytical FSR Upscaling version, is the only version available for RDNA 2 and 3, while FSR 4 is still exclusive to RDNA 4. Even though we know and have proven for months that FSR4 Int 8 works on older architectures. It's completely ridiculous that this feature is not an official inclusion in the Radeon driver stack as of February 2026. Naturally, when working on this video, I reached out to AMD to ask what the status of FSR4 Int 8 support is. They replied with a single line saying, "No updates to share at this time." And that's where things stand officially. There are no updates to share on AMD supporting a feature everyone knows is a thing. What is frustrating is that instead of AMD releasing FSR4 for older GPUs, they spent time adding an optional AI bundle to their latest Radeon driver release. You know, the gaming driver for gaming GPUs that they sell to gamers. Talk about not reading the room whatsoever. It's baffling to me that AMD included something that no gamer asked for instead of an obvious functional feature that everyone who owns an RDNA 2 or 3 GPU is asking for. And it's not like we're talking about a barely functional beta feature here. FSR4 Int 8, as tested with the DLL version compiled from source code, it seems to work really well. There are no obvious graphical glitches or issues that I found in my testing, and the performance impact seems in line with the complexity of FSR4's algorithm compared to FSR 3.1. Based on my testing and additional user reports, I believe the feature in its current version is good enough to release to the public, and it requires little to no further investment before release. It should be less trivial to add an already developed feature like FSR4 Int 8 to the driver package than adding the AI bundle that they worked on for the January driver release. The huge mistake AMD are making here is making it more obvious that NVIDIA offers better long-term driver support for GeForce GPUs than AMD does with Radeon GPUs. At CES this year, NVIDIA announced and released DLSS 4.5, which includes a brand new second-gen transformer model for upscaling. I found DLSS 4.5 was generally an improvement upon DLSS 4, and this new model is available to use on GPUs as far back as 2018's RTX 20 series. That's over 7 years of new feature additions for Turing owners, compared to AMD not bothering to release an already developed feature for GPUs released just 3 years ago. Now, of course, DLSS 4.5 doesn't run as well on RTX 20 and RTX 30 series GPUs as more modern cards. NVIDIA started using FP8 acceleration in the latest version, and hardware FP8 support was only introduced in the RTX 40 series. However, at least NVIDIA gives owners of older GPUs the choice as to which DLSS version they want to use, and gives them the option to use the very latest version if they want to. I don't necessarily recommend DLSS 4.5 on older cards in all circumstances, but there could be some cases where it's genuinely beneficial, so having an option is better than not having an option. Releasing DLSS 4.5 across all RTX GPUs has also shown AMD that there's nothing wrong with releasing features that might not perform optimally on older GPUs. If the market leader in gaming GPUs is doing it, so can AMD. Of course, I'd say that AMD doesn't actually need to wait for NVIDIA's permission to release FSR4 Int 8, but they seem to have this follower mindset lately where they like to just copy NVIDIA. Well, there's no better thing to copy than long-term driver support for your GPUs. This decision to not support older GPUs with the latest upscaler does go hand in hand with AMD's recent attempt at ending driver support for the RDNA 2 and RDNA 1 architectures by putting that driver branch into maintenance mode. This was a huge blunder that led to widespread criticism, and AMD eventually reversed their decision, confirming that the older RDNA 1 and 2 driver branch would continue to receive updates and day one game support. Completely unnecessary sort of blunder from them, and it gives off a perception that AMD isn't willing to support their products for as long as Nvidia. The reality here is simple. Adding FSR4 Int 8 support for RDNA 2 and RDNA 3 GPU owners is an easy win. It's great for PR, great for community sentiment, it's only a positive move. It gives back to loyal Radeon customers that bought AMD GPUs when their market share was declining, and most importantly, it would strengthen AMD's long-term support for GPUs and avoid a situation where AMD becomes known as the brand that doesn't care about supporting gamers. They should be trying to avoid this perception that Nvidia supports GeForce GPUs much better than them. That sort of thing spreads so easily via word of mouth, and let's be fair here, that perception is accurate. Right now, it's undisputed that Nvidia offers better long-term feature support. These things have a real impact on GPU buyers' decision-making. One of the many reasons Nvidia is the dominant brand in PC gaming is that they are seen as the company at the forefront of performance, software features, and software support. Gamers have shown they are willing to pay a premium to access all of those benefits. The last thing AMD should want is being behind Nvidia in this area and then making deliberate decisions to fall further behind. Because let's be honest, AMD's overall GPU sales are not good enough to justify stupid moves that hurt the community. Lots of Radeon owners are aware that they could have access to FSR4, except AMD isn't willing to support them officially. That's super duper bad for a company that is trying to recover from several really poor quarters of gaming division revenue just a year ago from today. Poor sales means needing to try harder to win back customers, not leaving customers behind. In a normal GPU market, offering FSR4 Int 8 officially would have been an easy win, but the win is even more substantial in the current market. GPU prices are going up. The RX 9060 XT 16GB is already up $100 US from its MSRP of $350 to $450 US at Newegg right now, and the 9070 XT is at minimum $730, which is $130 above its MSRP. It's becoming harder to access FSR4 at reasonable prices, so the best move to make gamers happy would be offering a game-changing feature to existing Radeon owners so that they can better utilize the hardware they have during a shortage. Build that goodwill now, and it will probably pay off later. The only reason I can think of that AMD has not already released this feature is that they want to incentivize existing RDNA 2 and 3 owners into upgrading to an RDNA 4 GPU to get FSR4 support. I think this is a poor strategy if that is the case. Firstly, by not releasing a feature the public knows exists, AMD have to balance the gains they'll make incentivizing upgrades with the losses they'll make annoying the community. Yes, some people might choose to upgrade because of it, but some people might decide to ditch Radeon because they're frustrated with how AMD have supported their existing purchase. AMD also have to factor in the GeForce owners they won't convert to Radeon owners as word spreads about the gulf in feature support between the brands. Secondly, we're talking about an established GPU series that is now in a phase of increasing shortages and price hikes. Most people that wanted to upgrade to an RDNA 4 GPU have probably already done so in the 11 months these cards have been available, especially when they were at the MSRP, and incentivizing more upgrades is much harder when prices go up. Now is the perfect time to release FSR4 for older GPU owners because the upgrade incentive is at its lowest. But over the last few years, we've been highly critical of the Radeon division's poor decisions and blunders. In fact, we've covered them extensively in previous videos. I thought that maybe AMD were on the right track when they finally decided not to ruin the RDNA 4 launch by getting the price largely correct. But more recent moves have me questioning that. The RDNA 1 and 2 driver support issue was a serious blunder, and now this situation with FSR4 support. So our position on feature support is pretty clear. New features should be supported on as many GPUs as possible with no artificial restrictions unless there is a genuine technical reason. With FSR4 Int 8, there is no genuine technical reason to restrict support. We actually know for a fact that it works. AMD sitting on their hands with this one is not good enough. It's poor form not to support existing customers, and owners of RDNA 3 and RDNA 2 GPUs have every right to be frustrated at what AMD are doing. The good news, the potential silver lining here, is that it is relatively easy to use FSR4 Int 8 unofficially. Because AMD accidentally released the source code, gamers have access to a functional version of it straight from AMD themselves. A simple DLL swap in the game files will give you access on RDNA 3 GPUs, and you can also enable it on RDNA 2 via a driver tweak. I'll link to a video below that will detail how to get that working for you. So anyway, that's it for this one. Just, again, this seems to keep coming up. I talked about it recently on some podcasts. It came up in the Q&As again. I don't know why this is still a thing. AMD just released FSR4 Int 8 officially. It makes sense. Just do it. And then I won't have to make videos like this. Anyway, that's it for this one. If you want to support hardware unboxing and independent testing that we do, please consider supporting us via the Patreon account. Links to that is in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.